6:30, we'll call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Shannon Blaze. Rebecca Bird. Here. Jim Jummer.
Here.
Andy Gleason.
Present.
Troy Johnson.
Here.
Tyler Rasmussen.
Here.
Justin Single.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about the minutes. Do we need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A motion made to approve the minutes, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion made and seconded, is there any discussion? I did notice a utility meeting, I was absent, but I made a motion. So that's the only thing
Oh, yeah.
I caught.
Alright.
Alright, so we could have a motion to approve the minutes with that correction.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the correction. I'll second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the minutes with the correction. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are good. Financial report. Any questions or concerns on the financial? If not, we'll file the finance report. Rural Fire Committee update. Well, we had pretty good rural fire meeting. I got the March minutes in front of me. We had the April minutes. Okay, there we go. So they talked about a 2% audit. We did okay on that. That's something that happens randomly as state comes in and does an audit for our fire department for 2%. They have to make sure they're using the money properly and operating properly. We talked about the budget money, which is later in the agenda. Rescue squad and fire were pretty busy during the blizzard. I think they deserve a lot of credit for the time and energy they spent. Instead of no calls, they had like 9 calls in 2 days, something like that. And then there was discussion regarding the contract with the ambulance. That'll be later in this agenda. Think of anything else, guys?
I've got, so, as I look into some of it, is this the payroll for the quarter?
Yes.
Is that, so there's just no dates on it as far as what it is? So I assumed that's what it was, but, okay. So, with that, and then we have the profit and loss for essentially a quarter now. And I was just trying to make sense of kind of what some of this stuff is, and on here, we've got the tax liability of the $1,626. And if I look on here on the profit and loss, it has a payroll tax expense of $1,648.06. Are those the same thing and they just don't match for some reason, or are those different? Is one question. Just to, and then maybe that tax liability goes somewhere else that isn't specifically laid out on here. And the tax roll expense of $1,648 is something that doesn't match the other things here. So I was curious what that could be, or if it just isn't the right number that maybe mistakenly got put on the payroll sheet.
So where do you see the 16?
So the 1626 is on the payroll sheet, is the ER tax liability, this guy right here. Oh,
Gotcha. Alright.
so just, again,
Alright.
is it supposed to match, or is it just a mistake written in there, or is it not even the same number and it's completely something?
Yeah, I can find.
Okay, so there's that. The other item, when looking at payroll, is there's overtime on it. The last thing that we had from ambulance was they made some, we'll say some concessions, instead of $4 an hour, they went down to $3 an hour for on-call. And they took out they had an original amount for overtime, and the proposed, the last one that we received, had nothing in there for budgeted overtime. So, they took out a budget for overtime, but we have overtime on here. And if we were to accept the budget was $2,080 for overtime. For one quarter, we're almost $1,800 for overtime. So even if we were going to do overtime, we're getting pretty close to that, with like, in the first quarter. So we've got 3 more quarters yet and what that might look like. So that's, the point on that is what things could end up financially.
Yep.
So we've got a budget that, what is that really gonna look like by the end of the year? And how do we work through that? And I guess the other side of it is, can they even get overtime for that? Is a big question I've got. Everything I looked into is if they're doing the on-call thing, it's a stipend for what they're doing. But can someone who's not an employee get overtime? And if the answer to that is no, then are they considered employees? And that hits the whole next whole ballgame of stuff I know that we had discussions.
Yeah.
So can there even be overtime per the rules? And from what I found, the answer is no, but you know, maybe there's something special when it comes to volunteers. But again, on here it says the proposed budget has nothing for overtime, and we got overtime on this quarterly payroll here.
Okay. Yeah, I know it was mentioned to me that there was some concern about the overtime and, you know, come end of the year, like the concern you had.
Yeah, we're financially, where's it gonna end up?
Right.
Because we're almost at the budget with 1 quarter. And ultimately, the overall arching comment to that leads into, we've had our discussions and where we're at or we're not at with the current contract for 2026. If it ends up being this huge amount dollar-wise, that just goes back to the conversation of, we have volunteers in the community, which is wonderful. But when do we draw the line for how much that could potentially cost versus other services? And again, see where that pans out. And I think the other biggest thing I saw in the profit and loss that just had a big question for me was, there's $61,000 in total expenses on this profit and loss. $47,041 and some change is under other expenses or other costs. So 77% of the expenses on the profit and loss are just categorized under other. What is 77% of all their expenses for a whole quarter then? So some of the things are categorized on here, 77% of them are not. It's just, well, what are those?
Okay. All right, there's a meeting next week. I highlighted the items you're questioning. And, I'll ask those questions.
Andy, excuse me, does everybody have their mics on? We have a hard time hearing back here.
Can you hear me or not?
Yes, we did.
Oh, wonderful. I know mine's on, I got the green light.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Okay, not before, no.
How about now?
Doesn't change at all.
No?
Is your green light on?
Yep.
But it doesn't show anything, you can't make it wrong.
Is there any kind of volume button?
It's just
Can you hear me now?
better.
No,
Are they
it's
speaking?
come right into the mic, when you just talks normally.
How about now?
It comes out to this number. So this one is whatever it was last month is 47.
I don't know.
Put them together.
Worked last time.
I'm just saying that's what it comes
Usually
from.
if you touch it, it makes it.
I don't know. I just know that it comes from a bit.
Corey, that,
sheet with the names and the payroll, that's for the quarter? Is that for the quarter?
yeah, that was the first question I had, is that
So-
for the quarter, yeah.
So for the quarter, we had 3 people on the EMS who responded for the whole quarter. So am I reading that right?
That's just on total.
Just on overtime?
That's just the overtime.
Okay.
The $3 an hour category there would be the people who were on call.
Okay, so
So
they
that's
don't
your-
have their hours listed out, okay.
It doesn't have. He has on-time hours, or, I'm sorry, overtime hours listed. Cause that's what it is, the very next
Right.
column is hours. When you multiply that with the 4, gives you the dollars in the next column.
Okay.
Okay. Good with Will Fire? Okay. Library update.
She's not gonna be here.
So we'll, move on from there. So period of public comment, once again, taxpayers and residents can speak. I'll give you 3 minutes. You need to comment on items on the agenda, and you can only speak once. So is there anybody that would like to comment?
I would just like to say thank you to the people who have served on the board, those who are gonna continue, and those who are leaving us. So, thank you. I know it takes a lot of time and effort.
No. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, just gonna ask one more time, anybody else? Alright, so go to our guests. We've got Leah here from CLA. She's gonna talk about our finances and audit.
Hi, everybody. All right, so I think I presented to most of you, I think, maybe a couple of new faces, so you guys know what you're in for. So, thank you for the introduction again. I'm Leah with CLA. I'm the signing principal in the village's audit. I think I've been working with the village now, I believe it's 6 or 7 years. So, seen a lot through the village, through different tenures of people and that type of thing. In addition to myself, there's also 2 people that come. There's a senior and an associate that come on site. We don't really do a whole lot of work remotely. We actually come and work in the field with Barb. Overall, the audit went very well. We're here for, I think it was about 3 days this year, right? So we're on site for 3 days, actively working with Barb. Barb does a great job at preparing for us, so we definitely thank her for all of her pre-work that she does for us to make our jobs while we're on site go a little bit easier, okay? All right, so I promise Andy I'm gonna talk fast because the storm out here is freaking me out, and I'm sure it is you guys too. So I'm gonna do my best to try to get through a lot of this stuff as quick as I can. Okay, so the large audit book I'm gonna start with first. The bound one. Okay, if you can turn real quick to page 1. This is our independent auditor's report, okay? So what this is at the end of the day, this is the sole report that we do as auditors, okay? And it gives an opinion on the fair presentation of your financial statements in terms of materiality, okay? Just like in the past, we've given the Village of Black Creek an unmodified or a clean audit opinion. That is the best that you can receive in the audit world, okay? When I talk in terms of materiality, that is a pretty good sized number, right? We don't give an absolute assurance that every single receipt, every single disbursement is exact in its right place, okay? So it is in terms of materiality. However, if we were to identify what we call something greater than trivial, okay, or an uncorrected misstatement of even just a few $1,000s, we would have to report that to you guys through the governance communication, okay? So just know that yes, we talk about materiality, but hey, that doesn't get us off the hook for reporting those types of things, okay? There was nothing like that. I should preface that or follow up and say that. We had nothing like that. So that would have been like, as an example, $2,000 that would be off on the bank reconciliation, okay? We would still have to report that to you guys, okay? All right, if we can turn the page real quick. I wanna talk real quick on auditor's responsibilities. So I had talked real quick again on that reasonable level of assurance. Again, we're not looking at every single dollar, every single dime that's in the books. Okay, we just don't have time as auditors, so we're really looking at the books at a risk-based approach and saying, okay, what could go wrong, and where are we focusing our attention as auditors, okay? I wanna talk real quick on that third bullet point down, that says obtain an understanding of internal control relevant to the audit in order to design audit procedures, blah, 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 blah. That is incredibly important, because as you can expect, as auditors, we come in and we tick and we tie and make sure that everything comes out, right? Well, another part of what we do that's extremely significant is understanding how your internal controls work, because that's where things can go wrong, right? It could be just a simple error, it could be fraud, it could be whatever it could be that could cause a misstatement of your financial statements, okay? So we spend a lot of time talking to Barb, understanding, especially now with Barb coming back, how have things changed? Okay, is there something different in how you're doing things for payroll or for a check disbursement, that type of a thing, okay? When we have deficiencies that we identify in controls, we have to report those to you guys as the board members, okay, through what we call audit findings. So there's 3 things. I know I sound like a broken record because I talk about them every single year, but they're important and I have to, as part of my profession, report them to you, okay? So they are detailed on page 75, you don't have to turn there unless you want to. I'll just narrate them real quick. Okay, so the first one is about adjusting journal entries that we prepare as auditors, some of which are material, okay? It's not unusual, working with the clients that I do with villages, towns, to have the auditors make a fair amount of journal entries at the end of the year to close some of those more unusual areas out. It does not mean that we're adjusting cash. It does not mean that we're reporting AP that didn't get recorded at the end of the year. Okay, we did in previous years, but not with Barb, okay? It does not mean that we're messing with cash receipts, nothing like that. These are more unusual type things, like adjusting for WRS, or adjusting for a large capital project like you guys have had the last couple of years. Those types of things are unusual. They're things that we help out at the end of the year, okay? But the facts are is that they're still adjustments, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, again, I don't think it's unusual for this size village. I don't feel like the journal entries that we're proposing are excessive, okay? The second internal control finding is simply that we prepare your financial statements. As CLA, we can't technically be part of your control environment, so you guys outsource that to us. You are risking that, oops, we could miss something. We're not in Barb's shoes every single day, so if we miss something, then we wouldn't catch that, okay? Is that gonna happen? Likelihood is probably pretty small, but it's there, okay? The third thing that is an internal control deficiency, and this is the big one that I talk on every single year, is the lack of segregation of duties, okay? Especially right now, I don't think you've hired a new deputy, right? So it is Barb that's in that office, really just kind of doing everything from day to day, okay? Very common, again, across villages and towns, because you're not gonna hire additional people just for the sake of segregation of duties, okay? Not saying that you don't need a deputy, because you probably do, but excess people to segregate duties even more. Even hiring back that deputy is not gonna segregate duties enough within the village of Black Creek to get that finding to go away. Okay, there has to be coverage, and there's gonna be times where there's gonna be overlapping responsibilities, okay? So what does that mean? Just be aware of it, okay? I saw that things were being reviewed when I came in, which is awesome. You know, I know that the cash reconciliation now, the bank reconciliations, those are reviewed and approved by somebody. I assume that you're doing that as well, which is awesome. So keep doing those things. The risk is that it's always retroactive, right? It's always after the fact. It's not being approved and done beforehand, but you're mitigating that risk by doing it after the fact, okay? All right, and just have a general awareness, you know, even questioning. You know, I appreciate the questions that I heard about, you know, EMS, the fire department, whatever you were talking about. Keep asking those questions and just be curious, okay? So any questions on those findings at all? Those are all recurring from the past. They're all ones I've talked about before. Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm not gonna go into anything else in the large book unless you guys have questions for me. Otherwise, let's go into the governance communication real quick. And listen to a rumble out there. I don't think it stopped the entire thing. Can't say I've ever given a board presentation during nonstop thunder. Okay, So, on this real quick, governance communication letter, so this is just gonna be kinda like our boilerplate type communication items, they're important, I'm not saying they're not, I'm gonna skip over some of them however though, cause they are the same as last year. Okay, so I'm just gonna talk on a few things real quick that I just want you guys to be aware of. Third paragraph down talks about no new accounting policies, okay? That's good, it means that when you're comparing audit reports between years, that you're comparing apples to apples, okay? Next year, there will be some, I won't say huge changes, but there will be some changes that are gonna impact the village, and I'll talk on those next year, okay? But this year at least was a smooth sailing year, okay? If we can turn real quick to the next page. Uncorrected misstatements at the top, that's where I had mentioned that comment before about trivial, and that if an auditor just, discovers a $2,000 bank error that can't be found, this is where that would be reported, okay, and as you can see, we did not identify, nor did management identify any uncorrected misstatements, okay? So I cannot say how important that is, because still, again, we can't just say, oh, it's not material and move on, okay? That next section, corrected misstatements, that does list out some of those that we made that are material, okay? Again, if you read through those, you'll know recording debt proceeds, issuance costs and principal payments, you guys don't have that happen every day, so that's something that us as auditors help with. Reversing a prior year AP, that had nothing to do with Barb, that was nothing that was negative whatsoever, that was just kind of what Barb had inherited the second time through. So all these types of things, again, are just unusual type things, okay? Any questions on any of that? Okay, we do talk next about disagreements with management. Obviously, there's nothing that we've disagreed on. A disagreement would be like I said, we disagreed on like an accounting policy or an accounting standard or how you're treating something, okay? So that would be pretty unusual. The remainder of this, excuse me, is just boilerplate type stuff. Unless anybody has questions, I was gonna move on to the financial trends, which start on page 4. Okay, so your governmental fund balances, okay, so this is going back to 12/31/25, okay? Obviously, since then, there have been some fund balance changes, okay? So I'm gonna talk on this real quick and give you these totals, but then we can talk real quick about some of those changes, cause at first it sounds like it's a little, you had a big decrease in your general fund balance, okay? So your governmental fund balances are in your general fund as well as all of your special revenue funds as well as, your TID fund, okay? So starting with the general fund, you had total general fund balance at the end of the year of about $180,000 versus 2024 was about $979,000. So you did have a significant drop in fund balance of about $800,000, okay? So probably like, at first it's like, oh man, that hurts. Well, it was planned for, okay? A big chunk of it was planned for. You knew that you were gonna have to use fund balance for streets and some stormwater project, or storm sewer projects that you had coming, right? So that was definitely already planned for. You'll see that $402,955 that had been assigned from the past, so you had already saved for it in the past, was spent, okay? Also, this does not include the state trust fund loan debt issuance that happened in 2026, okay? So, because it happened after 12/31, obviously it's not included then as of 12/31, you reimbursed yourself $400,000 in 2026 back to 2025 project, okay? So it was all planned for, okay? Even when you look at your budget, most of your budget variances only really occurred in capital outlay, okay? Everything else was right in line with where it should have been, okay? Any questions, comments, or anything on that? Okay. Looking at your special revenue funds, the library is committed only for the library, so the board has committed that all of that fund balance can only be used for them. They are housed in a separate fund as well, okay? They have about $35,000 in fund balance at the end of 2025 versus about $41,000 in the previous year. The Affordable Housing Fund, that was from TID number 2, that closed several years ago, so that sits there and is restricted only for affordable housing. So you do have about $73,000 in non-spendable fund balance, which I believe that's land, correct? Is that land that was purchased? Okay, and you also have restricted amount of about $331,000 for affordable housing. And then you have TID number 3, which is sitting right now at a deficit position of $6,500, but that's 'cause it's brand new, okay? So overall, your total governmental fund balance is set at about $612,000 at the end of the year. Okay, all right, so if we can move on real quick to the next page. So this is great, to be able to talk through, especially when you have that unassigned fund balance, because of the situation that debt had not until 2026, that wiped out all of your unassigned. But this does give you a very nice calculation at the bottom that shows what a reasonable fund balance amount would be with that unassigned amount. Okay, so about 202,000 to about 303,000. Unassigned is cash flow, right? And obviously the village needs cash flow in unearmarked ones that they can respond to emergency type situations, okay? So that's that. If you turn to the next page, this is your general fund revenues and general fund expenditures for 5 years. If you look at revenue, you'll see that your operating revenue for the general fund was about 1.248 million last year versus about 1.236 the previous year. So a very, very small increase. Taxes as well. Taxes actually even went down. They decreased by almost 1% from last year. Your general fund expenditures were about 1.9 million versus about 1.2 million in the previous year, okay? But super important is that most of that is in capital outlay. So the first 4 functions of general fund expenditures, so general government, public safety, public works, culture, and rec, that actually only went up about 81,000 or 8.77% from last year, okay? And all of that was in accordance with budget. Okay? Any questions on that? No? Okay, let's talk utilities real quick. So the water utility, you do have a pending rate case, has that been finalized now? Okay, very good, so that will have some rate increases in 2026. For 2025, the operating income for the water utility was about 79,000, okay? But the previous year was a very large loss of about 379,000. That's because a significant part of the Highway 47 project was not capitalizable, so it ended up being expensed right away through the water utility, okay? Okay, so overall right now, the water utility is doing okay, at least as of the end of the year. Any questions on any of that? Okay, and last but not least, sewer. Sewer is operating at a loss right now, so you'll see for 2025, it's about a $64,000 loss versus the previous year was about a $140,000 loss. But sewer has a significant amount of depreciation, okay? So as I've explained in the past, depreciation it represents cash that was already spent in previous years, right? So it's the ongoing use of that asset or expensing that asset over its useful life, but the actual cash part of it was already paid out years ago, okay? So that is about $304,000 every year that you do have in depreciation expense, okay? So that significantly brings down that operating income or loss down for the sewer utility, okay? Sewer does sit, they're very cash wealthy, which is good because wastewater treatment plants and et cetera are extremely expensive. But you do have about 1.5 million in cash right now and about a little over $1 million in restricted cash that's required with the revenue bonds, okay? So any questions at all? I think that takes me to the end.
Anybody have any questions?
Okay,
Thank you.
yep, I'm available at any time, please. If any of you guys think of questions after the fact, please get my contact information from Barb. I'm always happy to answer accounting questions. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe tonight, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So later would be item number 1. All right, so committee reports, we just did finance, item number 1. Item number 2, approve the payment of vouchers. Motion for that.
motion to approve payment of vouchers.
We have a motion made, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the payment of vouchers. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Courts utility, MSA March report. About the same as normal.
It's more updates, more information, things are working mostly.
I noticed we were dropping hearings on the RDCs again.
So, this is why we continue our work with the new treatment plant and keeping things moving forward, so.
Okay. And on file, item number 2. Discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to reassess the current design of the wastewater treatment plant project. You looking for a motion for that discussion?
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider for approval of the committee's recommendation to reassess the current design of the wastewater treatment plant project.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to reassess the current design of the wastewater treatment plant. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? All right, discussion can commence.
So the utility committee met, once, MSA had gotten further along with where they were at in their part of the process, and gave us some very realistic ideas and numbers of where things were gonna fall. We were able to then have discussions with the municipal advisor that we have. We painted a picture of, so here's where these costs most likely or could potentially come in. And a very large part of that is obviously Saputo. And if we continue down the direction we've been going down, it has us leaning a lot on Saputo. There are different ways to look at it. There's different ways that things can be set that doesn't put the village in such a liability to be leaning on one entity so heavily. And some of those discussions we had in the utility meeting of exactly what those may or may not be is yet to be seen for sure. At this point, the idea was to have MSA kind of put the brakes on so that we can just take a minute here to assess some other potential directions on where we may go with this. So that we can continue talking with people who are professionals and deal with this kind of thing on a regular basis. MSA are professionals within their area. We have our municipal advisor, who's a professional within her area, specifically more on the financial side of things. And now it's trying to get a little more information on say, the legal side of things, professionals that look at these types of things more frequently. So right now, there are some discussions on having a discussion with a lawyer as far as, kind of what is the next best step so that we can mitigate the liabilities to the village, so that we don't end up in a catastrophic situation that could potentially be there. Not saying it would happen, but you never know what can happen, so you wanna plan the best you can to avoid those things. I guess I don't have too much more than that. Ultimately, the point is right now, we wanna just put the brakes on so that we can have a few more discussions with professionals to figure out what is the next best step so that we're not putting ourselves out there too far. I don't know how much more detail we wanna go than that at this point. If it's more informing, as far as I'm concerned, it's more informing the board as to where it is right now. Sherry is here if anybody would have questions, but I that's fine.
I understand the situation. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, we have to make sure we're protecting the interest of our citizens.
Correct, and now that we've gotten to the point where we actually have some things to work with and see where some things can play out, it's quite an interesting thing to look at. These are very large numbers, and we we wanna do our best. Like I've said, I think it's the third time now to mitigate the liability of the village, as best we can, so.
Any more discussion? A recommendation out of that discussion, correct?
Correct. At this point, there's gonna be some more information to be gathered as far as what will be the recommendation, or what will be the discussion of what that recommendation will lead to, based on some more conversations with people much smarter than me, so.
All right, so if there's no more discussion, we'll move on to item number 3. Discuss and consider for approval retaining attorney for industrial sewer user agreements and ordinance updates. I'll be looking for motion for that.
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider for approval retaining attorney for industrial sewer user agreements and ordinance updates.
Yeah, a motion made, do I have a second? We have a motion made and seconded to discuss and consider for approval retaining attorney for industrial sewer user agreements and ordinance updates. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, so discussion,
Which this leads into exactly what I was talking about here, is kind of the next step in professional that deals with these types of things on a regular basis. And I guess I can't say specializes in it, but is very informed as far as what these are and the directions they go, so.
we haven't reached out to this individual yet.
We've not reached out to him yet.
Okay. So this person was recommended through,
Sherry's worked with him, Denmark has worked with him, Vinny has worked with him, and Denmark has Land O'Lakes, right?
Yeah, Land O'Lakes used to be, industry in their community. And that's who this attorney helped develop the service agreement for. Land O'Lakes left the community and they're still paying on their capital that they essentially purchased at the wastewater plant.
okay,
So I think that's sort of the way, I mean, that's what the village of Black Creek needs to protect themselves for as well.
correct. Yep. Okay, is there any more discussion? If there's no more discussion, we'll be looking for a recommendation.
I'll make a recommendation to approve the attorney for retaining attorney for industrial sewer use agreements and ordinance updates.
Should we have a name in that motion?
You want the name in it?
We don't know if he would take us on,
Oh,
he's
okay.
just the one
Okay.
that first on the
Alright.
recommendation.
Yes.
That makes
We're going to
sense.
need somebody though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right, so we have a motion made, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion made and seconded to recommend contacting attorney for
His motion was for retaining.
retaining attorney for industrial sewer user agreement. All those in favor say aye,
And ordinance.
and ordinance
Just wanna make sure we get all in
updates.
there.
And ordinance updates, sorry. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? Motion carries. DPW update, streets. Steve?
Well, we're continuing to be very busy. Last week, we started doing water meter testing. Previously, per Public Service Commission guidelines, at 10 years, you either have to replace water meters or test them. Previously, we replaced them, but with the cost getting close to $300 a meter, we started testing them now. So we built a test table. We now go and remove the meter, bring it back to the plant, test it, and take it back and put it in within an hour. So we started doing that. As a lot of you may have seen, Aqualis is in town doing their contracted work with cleaning, televising, and repairs to the sanitary sewers. Shortly, we'll be starting our own sewer cleaning with our truck. Next week, we'll be doing valve exercising and hydrant flushing. So there was a notice posted for that, so that's what's coming up in the near future, so.
Okay, thank you. Insurance and personnel, nothing there. Buildings and grounds, anything for buildings and grounds, Steve?
No, I think most of it will be covered in the next agenda item.
Okay. Buildings and grounds, item number 2, discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to approve and accept SMA's bid for the Public Works Building in the amount of $1,906,550. Looking for motion for that discussion.
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to approve and accept SMA's bid for the Public Works Building in the amount of $1,906,550.
Yeah, the motion made, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion made and seconded to discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to approve and accept SMA's bid for Public Works Building in the amount of $1,906,550. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, discuss the waivers.
So, just, I'll throw it out there quick, this was for the bidding, they were the lowest bid, it was extremely competitive in my opinion. When you have let's just call it a $2 million building and the numbers are 1.9, 2 million across multiple contractors, it was very competitive bidding. SMA was the lowest bid, and I know RMA went through their processes to certify that bid and make sure they're a qualified bidder, and they are per the process, so. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's it. As far as this building is concerned, the reason the building is happening is for the wastewater treatment plant. And the current building is has to be removed to make room for the expansion or update of the existing stormwater or wastewater treatment plant. So that's why this building is here.
One item, I would say, an extremely important item that we discussed in the committee meeting was if the board makes this or approves this recommendation of the 1.9 million, that's gonna put us close to, or say right around 80% of our debt limit. So what that means is, and we can have the discussion of, is it the right move, do we have any other options? We can go through that discussion, but if we're at 80% of our debt limit, with the village, we are capped at how much on a year-to-year basis we can borrow total. If you go above that, beyond that, there are certain things that happen that we don't wanna deal with, and let's just say that's not an option, right? So if we approve this, we're at 80% of that limit, that ties in the hands of the village pretty tightly for a while. Now, every year, you will make payments on principal, and ideally, values will increase to some degree, but those are gonna be incremental, slowly over time, as you pay off a loan, as everyone knows, paying off a loan, it takes time, right? So, it's just making the board aware that if you vote yes to it, you're fully aware of what you're voting yes to as far as what it means to the debt. And I'm not saying vote yes or no, just, it's a very important piece of information to be aware of. If major surprises happen over the next handful of years, they're gonna be very difficult to deal with, if the board does approve this recommendation. So we can go to the other side of that conversation and say, well, what else do we do? There needs to be a public works building. Are there other options? We've had multiple years of that discussion, of potentials of things that could happen, size, this is ultimately, from my point of view and being in many of these meetings, with buildings and grounds is essentially, this isn't fancy. We're not putting up a fancy building and spending a whole bunch of money that, all these extra things. Maybe there's a little extra here or there, but ultimately, when I think of this building, ideally, the village grows in the future, right? And if we cram ourselves into a small area, how do we grow? Whereas with this building would allow us to grow if we need to. We can add on to it, we can do certain things to it in the future if we need to. It does put us in quite a bind as far as the debt goes right now, but it's kind of the position we're in at this point.
You know, to reiterate what Corey said, Steve and his crew, and I was involved with some of it, spent a lot of time looking at other buildings, looking at what other people did, coming down to just the bare minimum of being enough space and things and amenities that we need, and ruling out as many things as we can. I believe he looked at as many options as he could for the final bidding numbers, and that's where we ended up. Not to say there's not a few minor, who knows what discussions, we talk about all kinds of things of which way we can go, but this is where we ended up.
I just wanted to share some thoughts on what Corey touched on about us hitting a good percentage of our legal debt limit. I don't think I have to explain too much about all the projects we got hammered with the last few years. A lot of it wasn't because we wanted to do it, we had to. In particular, we had, years ago I got on the board, that's when they first started talking about redoing 47. And we had plans to do our water and sewer down Main Street. DOT delayed. COVID hit, inflation went up, and there we sat. We tried to get 2 or 3 grants, we never got the grants. So anybody that's been on the board understands that. I don't think those circumstances that we got on the village, I don't think there's really any way we could have changed it or avoided it. I would think most small communities don't have multi-million-dollar projects, one after another in a very short period of time. The stormwater was another one of those things that came to pass when we had, several instances of flooding in town. We were very lucky to get help from the county and the state to help us figure out the stormwater issues. Typically, the DOT does not help municipalities with stormwater issues. We did pay a percentage of the stormwater bill, but the DOT did pay, a pretty good share of it. So we couldn't really turn that down because the DOT offered to help pay for a good part of that. And I distinctly remember, we're working on 47 and Jerry Schutte was working for us then, and all of a sudden the DOT says, hey, we're gonna do Highway 54. Oh, great, so it's just, a matter of circumstances that occurred for the village. Not trying to sugarcoat it or saying, well, shucks darn. I just want everybody to understand the circumstances that got us to that debt limit. And now with the wastewater treatment plant, we have to build a new building. So that's where we're at. So, there is a chance for some growth in the village, and it's nothing I can talk about right now. I hope by the end of the year I can talk about it, but, it's, even then, that growth won't really help us revenue wise for a while. And, you know, we're just gonna have to be, in the future, this board and the future boards are gonna have to work diligently to handle that debt load and make sure we're getting it paid off. And then cross our fingers, you know, we don't have an unforeseen project come up. To my knowledge, there are no projects that are, as far as our general revenue. You know, obviously, we're always gonna have projects with the sewer and water, as we replace infrastructure, but that's all comes out of our revenue from the utilities, so. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that, so. Okay, any more discussion? Yes, Sarah?
Am I allowed to say something? I mean, I know you don't have any comments, but Andy, I understand that the 5447, the sewer project, that was out of our hands, in your hands. I am so disappointed in Corey. I know he's not running. You just mentioned now that you know that we're at a certain percent of our debt limit. We told you, all of you, last summer in
All right,
spreadsheets,
we're
and
good.
no one agreed
Sarah,
to it.
that's good, we understand, thank you.
That's good?
No, we've, okay,
Andy, we've been asking for the village board to hire financial consultant.
okay, all right. Any other discussion? All right, if there's no more discussion, I'll be looking for a motion for recommendation.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of committee's recommendation to approve the no, it's not what we're doing.
You already have the recommendation, you're looking for a motion to either approve it
Yeah,
or nothing.
make a motion, make a motion to approve, make a motion to approve the recommendation. Right?
Approve to accept SMA's bid for public works building in the amount of $1,906,550.
Correct.
Do you wanna say the recommendation, please?
I'll make a recommendation to approve SMA's bid for the public works building in the amount of $1,906,550.
Got a motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve committee's recommendation to accept SMA's bid for public works building in the amount of $1,906,550. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. All right, ordinance. Discuss and consider for approval an operator's license. Operators licenses for Katie Holtz, Taylor Blazek, Ryan Schomish, Paul Sassman, Lori Sassman, and Thomas Shook. Looking for a motion for that discussion.
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider for approval an operator's license for Katie Holtz, Taylor Blazek, Ryan Schomish, Paul Sassman, Lori Sassman, and Thomas Shook.
Motion made, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, got multiple seconds. To discuss and consider for approval of these operators licenses. Just mostly for the fire?
No,
No, different ones?
a little bit of everything.
Oh, a little bit of everything. So, Ryan, Paul, Lori, and Tom would be for fire and rescue. other licenses for Katie Taylor Blazik. There was some concerns.
Thanks for our background information on those individuals.
Yep.
Katie Holmes has minor traffic that was reported. Taylor has multiple traffic violations, a battery and disorderly in 18. Mr. Shomish has a traffic incident. Mr. Sassman has a municipal traffic incident. Mrs. Sassman has no traffic, and Mr. Shup has traffic and a restraining and a judgment for money. And if you need their specifics, they're here.
Okay, so. Is there any, was Taylor Blazik that had? Anybody else want to see?
Yep, those are right here.
Sorry, we can't hear again.
He was just asking for the guidelines we've used in the past for licenses.
Thank you.
For that, yes. Yep, Deputy Bugolke lists everything that's found in the background as should be, so that the board is fully aware of who is issuing license. Those have been checked against that and flagged, but I still have to report them. Thank you.
With that information, does anybody want to make a recommendation for those licenses?
I will make a recommendation to approve operators licenses for Katie Holtz, Taylor Blazik, Ryan Shomish, Paul Sassman, Lori Sassman, and Thomas Shute.
We have a motion made, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve operators licenses for Katie Holtz, Taylor Blazik, Ryan Shomish, Paul Sassman, Lori Sassman, and Thomas Shook. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Opposed.
Do you want roll call or
Yeah,
no?
we better do roll call on this.
Okay, Rebecca Bird,
Yes.
Tim Dewar,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Tim?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Andy?
Yes.
Corey Johnson?
No.
Tyler Rasmussen?
Yes.
Justin Stingle?
No. Okay.
4 yes, 2 no. Motion carries.
Alright. Item number 2, an ordinance, discuss and consider for approval a Class B beer license for Black Creek Youth Sports. Looking for a motion for that discussion.
Make a motion to discuss and consider for approval a Class B beer license for Black Creek Youth Sports.
Yeah, motion made, do I have a second? Motion made and seconded to discuss and consider for approval Class B beer license for Black Creek Youth Sports. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Any discussion?
Fill out the application.
Application was completed, the president of BCYS is Eric Hyden. He worked with Taylor and I think Tyler to get the application completed. It was published in the paper as is required.
Any more discussion? If there's no more discussion, I'll look for a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve a Class B beer license for Black Creek Esports.
And the motion made, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve Class B beer license for Black Creek Youth Sports. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. New business, discuss and consider financing of Public Works building project.
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider financing of Public Works buildings project.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to discuss and consider financing of the Public Works building project. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Alright. Discussion. So, the past few loans we've gotten through the, what is that, land?
Board of Commissioners of Public Lands.
Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. So, it's typically where we go first. Are familiar with the process. Unless somebody has some other ideas. It's more than what my 401k has, so. Alright, any more discussion? Basically, we need the recommendation for Barb to look into that, correct? Is that what we can
You want the application paperwork?
do?
And how many years for the loan? Can I go up to 20? Right around 6, just over 6%, I believe, is the interest rate.
It's 6.5.
Yeah, we've been going 20 so far. Once we get all these loans consolidated, then we'll see what else we can do.
I mean, I'm assuming there's no other, I mean, what other alternative options?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
And we need a public works building, and I don't know what other alternative there could be.
Yeah, I guess I've never looked beyond using the Board of Commissioners, so.
And is this the one where the interest rate doesn't go back to the life?
A portion of the interest goes back to libraries
Yeah, that's what I thought. I remember looking at
through the whole state.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody wanna make a recommendation? Okay, anybody wanna make a recommendation?
I'll make a recommendation, you'll have to put it in the land trust.
Yep.
What the proper name for that is, in public land. For a 20-year loan to fund the Department of Public Works building. Or is that okay? You worded it.
The BCPL? Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, I have a motion made, do I have a second?
No second.
We have a motion made and seconded to apply 20-year loan with the DCPL. Correct?
Yes, to fund the Public Works
To
building, he
fund
had on
public
there.
works. All right, I have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Item number 2. Discuss and consider village attorney's recommendations regarding the agreement between the Village of Black Creek, Town of Black Creek, Town of Cicero Village and Nichols for sharing service related to EMS in conjunction with state innovation grant. Looking for a motion for that discussion.
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider village attorney's recommendations regarding the agreement between the Village of Black Creek, Town of Black Creek, Town of Cicero, and Village of Nichols for sharing service related to EMS in conjunction with Wisconsin State Innovation Grant.
I have a motion made, do I have a second?
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded to discuss and consider village attorney's recommendations regarding the agreement between the Village of Black Creek, Town of Black Creek, Town of Cicero, and the Village of Nichols for sharing service related to EMS in conjunction with the state innovation grant. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? Okay, so first of all, I need to apologize and fall on my sword a little bit. What occurred was I had a meeting, the 17th, with representatives from the other towns. I was given what I considered a rough draft of these agreements. I shared those agreements with the clerk. During that process, there was communication going on regarding the grant process. Originally, when we had the meeting on the 17th, we thought we had to get it done by the 31st to get, meet a deadline for the application of the innovation grant. During that time period, I was informed that we wouldn't be applying for the grant for this year because the budgets for fire and rescue rate went up for 2026. So it was determined we were best off to wait till next year for the next grant application process. So then, the Friday after I got the actual agreements, I happened to be in the clerk's office and we had discussion between me, Barb, and Jenny. We had the agreements. I believe I talked about putting on the, because I was setting up the special meeting to discuss this. It was mentioned to me that we should give it to Bob. My brain did not click and say, yes, send it to Bob. Life happens, I kind of forgot about that aspect. until we got to that special meeting, and then when we voted on it, I was told that we should send it to Bob. And at that moment, I had a poop moment, I should have done that. So then I contacted the attorney to have him review the agreements. He did share his thoughts on that. And part of his thoughts was to put it back on the board so that we could discuss it further. So I apologize for any problems that caused, and so here we are, we're discussing it again. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, or concerns? So I've been told by the parties involved, this agreement is basically as it's spelled out, it's an intent to form these entities, and then at that point, once the entities are enforced or in place, then there'll be application for the innovation grant based on the new. Right now, we're just talking about the EMS district. So there is a meeting scheduled next week already to start the process of forming the EMS district. I know there's some questions out there regarding Black Creek Rescue. In my mind, having this EMS district will also provide our best way to have affordable services if Black Creek Rescue would not be able to provide services for the district, then that district could look elsewhere to contract EMS services. So for me, that's a big plus. You know, last fall, we contacted Gold Cross. Gold Cross had no interest in serving the village of Black Creek on its own. Or if we had to do it with the EMS district, it would most likely be available to us. And also, as everybody knows, we did contact county rescue back then. So, the only other thing I can add is, you know, if for some reason, if the board changes their mind tonight, the other three entities will be going on without us at the table to discuss the new district. We could still be a partner in it, but we would not have a seat at the table.
So, the agreement, what exactly am I holding? Just so I'm very clear on exactly what's in my mind. I read what it says here, but what exactly is it?
This is an attempt
Okay.
to form Sharon-related services for EMS. And then doing so, the entities involved become eligible for state innovation grant money.
Okay. So this is saying that there's an intent to do this, right? That's what I'm holding is saying, that we're thinking about it, we wanna come together, but, so we're just agreeing on talking more about it essentially, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. That's what this is, because, but I guess the challenge, as I look through this, there's really minimal information as far as, it's not a contract for service. So I guess, that's where I'm getting confused when I look at it.
Yeah.
So we sign this, there isn't a lot in here other than saying the municipalities involved, 5 years when it starts, to provide the service, the actual wording is the same or better, or however the wording is, and then the amounts. So if we sign this, what exactly are we signing? That we're going to pay these amounts over 5 years, and we still have to hash out the details? Because this isn't, when I look at this isn't an actual contract for service. Unless I'm wrong, and it is. If it is a contract for service, it's very minimal. So that's why I just wanna know what it is for sure.
Jenny, would you mind helping?
Sure. So that is just an intent. So because rural fire does not have an intergovernmental agreement, they are not a legal recognized entity. So we're looking to establish a board that is legally put together with an intergovernmental agreement. That is just the intent to create that board, basically saving the village a seat on that board. Now, if the village decides to walk away in 2 years, they decide to walk away in 2 years. They are not tied to this. But also saying that the money that you see in there is money from last year that is eligible for the grant. That's why that money is in there. So the intent for that 5 years to run out, 4 years actually now, to run out, but each year we're eligible for 25% of whatever is being paid in to support rescue and also separately fire, because we're gonna create a new board for fire as well. So the consultant wanted this to know all the players that we're having, so Cicero, Nichols, and the town have already signed. The village has signed as well, but that is just establishing who are the players, what money is being considered. So your commitment to EMS for the next 4 years. Your other option is I don't know, because you're gonna have the benefit of getting a group rate if you decide to go with like a county rescue or a Gold Cross, whatever it happens. You have the ability to negotiate using everybody's population, not just the villages. Because that was part of the Gold Cross's problem, is they wanted everything, not just the little bit. So your obligation from that is really nothing outside of help us establish a board.
And the process of setting up the new entity, then we would be establishing, the financial oversight and
Yep.
who's in charge of what. And
My position as treasurer would also be eliminated and being put at that board. So the patient income that I currently hold at $48,000 a year would then be handled at the board level and not by EMS.
So when we look at the attorney's points on here, and someone can tell me if I'm wrong, it kind of sounds like he's looking more into some of the details of what would come next, not what is in my hand right now. Okay. But that's where I'm just a little, on multiple points in here, you would suggest the matter once again to be placed on the agenda, and adding information as the intent. That remains open for review. Use of public funds should be subject to some process of oversight. So in multiple places in here, he discusses oversight. So that's where when I look at this is, through this conversation, is saving the seat at the table, here's the type of money that we are anticipating. But it's not an actual agreement to do anything other than we intend to be part of the remaining, we intend to do the conversations coming next. It's because there's nothing else here.
Correct.
That the items that he points out in here would be part of an actual agreement that comes up, because this isn't an agreement for service. And that's,
It's only an agreement to look at forming a district, that's it. The big part he has is the agreement versus intent, that's his biggest part.
And honestly, if the village decides to back out now, the other 3 municipalities have already been okay with it, so if you need to rescind motions, you rescind motions.
I looked this over, and then after I looked that over, then I looked at his points, and then I kinda went back and forth of, I understand his points fully and agree. It's just what I believe I'm holding and what you've told me isn't necessarily where we would sign over what our whole agreement is as to how this would be governed and what oversight it would be. That would come in the meetings, as to what's agreed on.
Yeah, no intergovernmental agreement has been even discussed. I've met with each municipality, but no intergovernmental agreement has been discussed. How exactly the board's gonna be set up and function has been, I mean, we threw out some ideas, but nothing has really been set in stone, nothing like that. So it is just, this is just the starting point of who's gonna be sitting at the table.
Okay, any more discussion?
Can I make a comment, Andy?
Christie?
I guess to throw in the town of Cicero's viewpoint on it is, this is a plan B. To kind of sum it up is because last year, as you know, we ran into that problem where we ran out of time at the end of the year. So God forbid something happens where Black Creek Rescue can't get volunteers. We don't wanna wait until November, December of this year. That's the reason for, in addition to getting the innovation grant, is getting the process started earlier in the year so that if something happens where we need to look elsewhere for service, we have this all formed already and ready to roll. So when I address my town board, we label this as Plan B in case what we're doing now doesn't work, so. I don't know if that clears things up a little bit. Trying to get ahead of the game so we're not behind the 8 ball at the end of the year if we need to make a change, so.
Okay, any more discussion? Because we already approved this in the special meeting. I don't believe we need a recommendation unless somebody wants to change what we did. Does that sound right?
Are you asking me or telling me?
Well, I'm just making sure I'm doing it right.
So this was the opportunity for the board to look at what the village attorney's recommendations were and decide if they wanted to pursue those recommendations or not.
I guess if the board has specific recommendations you'd like me to go to the meeting next week with.
So, if we look at what the attorney has, item number 1 is actually labeling it as an intent instead of an agreement. If that's in fact what it is, with the conversation we just had, is what that sounds exactly like what it is, based on the last 10 minutes of discussion.
Yeah, I guess that first paragraph, he's basically pointing out that needed to be more clear language. You know, verbally, we're saying intent.
two is we're discussing it now, the matter is open for review, which is all we're talking about here. That's where he discusses oversight again. But from my understanding, this isn't necessarily where that language comes into play. I'm not trying to, if this is an intent, then we're not necessarily looking at the language of what the oversight is, that will come in when the municipalities come together to discuss how we'll actually be defined collectively.
Yeah, I would guess the plan is to have a meeting on, I would say within 2 or 3 meetings, we'd have a pretty good outline. And I'm pretty sure there's already, districts out there we can kind of copy as far as their, agreements and setting this up.
Alright, and then item number 3, suggests that any intent for agreement found related to the obligation of the village to pay the stated amounts on an annual basis is contingent on the innovation grant being secured at the levels now offered or anticipated. Which just clears up, so we have numbers in here, but if the grant hasn't, I think so.
Andy, can I interject? Can I
Pardon?
speak?
Yes, go ahead.
So those numbers are based, so next year, we should be getting 25% of those numbers that are in there.
That's what the numbers are for, is a percentage of the grant.
And then next year after, as long as we don't exceed 115% of those numbers, then we'll qualify for the grant. Now, if for some reason we do exceed those numbers, we would no longer qualify for the grant and there would be no limitation on that budget amount. So if something catastrophic happens where the budgetary cost would go up, you wouldn't be on the hook for anything more. We would just not be eligible for that grant for that year, because it's a yearly payout. I don't want you to get so hung up on those numbers, because those numbers are gonna fluctuate a little bit. But that is gonna be what the minimum requirement is for that grant.
That these municipalities pay that minimum amount.
That's.
Is it permissive, or just the total? The total has to be met.
Yes, correct,
It's just dispersed and it's how it's laid out.
yes. And there is no repayment, so if we qualify for the grant year 1 and 2, but not 3 and 4, there is no repayment of any past grant money. It's just we don't qualify it after that point.
Okay, any more discussion? So more discussion, move on to item number 3.
So so if we move on right now, right now there's a motion, right now we've already moved on. Yeah, there's already, in the special meeting, there was a motion made to accept this agreement. Right? So right now, the whole idea is before the board again, whether there's any changes to that. And I would argue, at this point, we have 3 specific points from the attorney that, do we ignore all 3 points and just leave this as it is, this agreement as it is, or do some changes happen based on what our attorney has recommended? Because he's making some recommendations that you're gonna make some changes, such as, number 1, it's not an agreement, it's an intent. So that's just item number 1. If we move on now, it can come up on an item again, potentially, being back on the agenda, but that's kind of what we're doing right now. Does the board wanna move forward without any of these points being changed on this agreement, this intent? Well, right now it's an agreement. I'm not trying to make it more difficult, however, I also don't wanna get information from our attorney and just say, we're smarter than our attorney, I'm not smarter than our attorney. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. I don't wanna make things more difficult, but I don't wanna get here's what you should do, let's put that over the side and not do anything with that. I don't think that's a good idea.
I understand what you're saying, I'm not sure how to handle it.
So is it possible that we can make is it possible to make a motion to add some of these items in here for this wording so that it just matches better with where our attorney thinks this should be? Let's just say, to make it really simple right now, here's an agreement, here's the agreement, right? Well, we could say, we would make a motion to change the wording from agreement to an intent. It's a legal thing, but there's one thing we can do, right? And again, I don't wanna make it more difficult, but I also don't wanna ignore what our attorney is telling us that we should do based on his recommendation. So that would be, if we go that route, item number 1 is agreement to intent. Item number 2 is, he discusses is oversight essentially, which with that one, I would ask him the question, is this where we discuss oversight, or is it the next step? I think it's the next step based on our conversation. That's the actual agreement that comes together. I don't think in an intent we necessarily have to have oversight wording in an intent.
Yeah, I read it as, you know, public funds should be subject to process oversight.
Yep.
We would need to include that in the future.
Yep.
The other thought I had is whatever agreement comes after this, can we put wording in there that any prior agreement is?
Well, this isn't an agreement, though. If we make that change, this is an intent, right? So maybe, and I don't know, cause I'm not a lawyer, if we make the sole change here to just call this an intent, we're not binding ourselves to anything. She's already said, we're not binding ourselves to anything based on the way she's having this discussion. If we wanna back out at any point, we back out, but I'm not saying we back out. But if we make the only change to turn this from an agreement into an intent, does that solve the whole problem on this? And these future items, these future points, these other points he has come into play in the future when an actual agreement is put together? Maybe that's good enough. I just wanna make sure that this will be signed, or would be signed, or is signed to the printing.
Unfortunately, they signed it already.
Okay, so whatever we do with that, I guess I don't know what to do with that, but I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. So.
I think based on our discussions here, if it can be changed, we change the agreement to an intent, and that intent now is the whole thing open for more discussion when we actually come to agreements. This is not an actual agreement. So we don't wanna call it an agreement. Maybe that's something we have to do. Can we make and I don't know, can we make a motion to change the wording of this from an agreement to an intent? That's what the board approves. Since you've signed it, what does that change? Are we bound regardless? And the last half hour was not a good conversation regardless. I don't know what that means. I don't know.
You have something to add, Jimmy?
So, is the village asking for their own private intent, separate from the 3 other municipalities that have agreed to it?
No, not the way I view this. I mean, I guess if they sign it as an agreement, they sign an agreement, the way I'm reading this, we should sign an intent, we shouldn't sign an agreement. The agreement will come after all the.
Right, but all that paperwork has all been done, has all been pushed through the municipalities.
Mhm.
So does the village want different paperwork than what so they want a separate intent? And the other three municipalities are?
Ideally, as Mr. Gleason stated, he would have sent this to the attorney before it was signed. And then we would have had this prior.
Rescind the motion.
Well, no, I understand, but that doesn't necessarily even answer the question that you're asking. It's just, what I am discussing changes one word in this whole piece of paper. In the legal world, it's important. Our discussion of how we understand and feel about it is one thing, but we're signing things in legal documents. I'm not, on the face of it, no, it's nothing different. The only thing different is instead of an agreement, it's called an intent.
Okay.
That's the only thing that I'm getting at based on what I'm reading from the lawyer. That way we're not.
Anything, I'm sorry.
I'm just repeating myself now.
Because it is an agreement that the village of Black Creek, the town of Black Creek, the town of Cicero, the village of Nichols are in agreement for the intent of sharing services related to emergency medical service, blah, blah, blah. That's what we're saying.
But that's not what's written, and that's.
No, that's, I'm just saying that out loud. When I read that, I don't see how you say an intent between, you say this is an agreement between all of these parties for the intent of sharing related emergency medical service, so they can work on getting the thing, because we've all agreed to that, the intent is not written in there. That's.
Yeah, so I say this is an intention between, whether it's said this is an intention between, or this is an agreement to, intent, I understand. Ultimately, it's putting, it's
With the intent for
putting this
sharing
and calling it an
services,
intent
which
instead
is
of.
said, with the intent for sharing services related to medical services and EMS, blah, blah, blah.
So if we make a motion to do this, technically we have to rescind the other one, right? So if we go that route, I just wanna play this out so I can understand what would actually happen. If we make a motion to rescind the special meeting one, where it sits, and we make a new motion that this is an intent between the municipalities, essentially come together and all the readings and all the languages in there. What does that do then? It covers us as far as a legal stance from our lawyer's point of view. What does that do on this, on this other side of this?
You're on your own little island. I got 3 municipalities that have all agreed, and that'll have to go back to them.
For changing one word, right, the only thing you want to change is.
I just don't want to, yeah, based on what our attorney's saying is.
Is this the intent between the village and the town for the sharing of services? And intent between BC, Cicero, but is that the only word you wanna change, or do you want other words changed? I lost you in the circle.
Just to turn this from an agreement to an intent.
Okay, so it's just that one word.
It's essentially that one word.
Got
It's
it.
an intent between the villages, and this intent is made effective as of January 20. I'm going down this road, and again, like I said before, I don't wanna be difficult, how can we take what our attorney gives us and just say, nah, we're just gonna ignore that because it's easier maybe, or whatever. This is a difficult conversation because I have no idea exactly what to do with it. Other municipalities have gone the direction that they did with this agreement, but again, are we willing as a board to look at what our attorney said and say, we're not interested in your opinion on this matter? I just don't know what implications are down the road, like, kind of what she's stating, I don't know what that means, I don't know what implication that is overall, what does that change?
Would you like me to contact Bob to ask
I guess more clarification,
how we
sure.
should handle it?
Is Bob aware you already signed it?
That's the other side of it, too. I don't
That's
know
the
what that
problem.
means, then that's where, in which, okay, I mean, it was in the meeting, however that voting came to be, it is what it is.
Yeah,
I don't know what that means in a legal sense.
Yeah, this email you have was part of the email train. Before that email, I did share with him, I signed it.
So maybe a clarification from his point of view, how does,
Hmm.
so, just that question, I signed it, is it done? Is it a blast? Or does he say, no, here's what I know, or whatever that may mean, I don't know what the full implications are. I just don't wanna get information from our lawyer and ignore it, and just say.
Correct, I got you. Alright. So. So we'll contact Bob, get some further advice on that.
Which I think falls down the same line, and also, it's the same thing.
Can I say something, Andy? Very short.
Yep.
You could probably contact 3 or 4 different attorneys and you're gonna get a different opinion.
Bob
So
is
what-
our attorney.
So what makes you think his is the best?
Because
And, you
he's
know,
our
Bob
attorney.
Sweeney's, you know.
If we want a different attorney, we can look for one, but Bob's our attorney.
I-
I don't
I'm
think we
just
wanna
saying.
look for a different one.
Alright, that's good. Alright, so. Alright, so item number 3. Where am I?
Same thing.
So the same thing except for fire. Because it's agenda, they gotta open the discussion. Alright. Item number 3, discuss and consider village attorney's recommendation regarding the agreement between Village of Black Creek and Town of Black Creek for sharing service related to fire protection in conjunction with Wisconsin State Innovation Grant. We looking for a motion for that discussion?
I make a motion to discuss and consider Black Creek Rural Fire Department, recommendations agreement between the Village of Black Creek, the Town of Black Creek for shared services related to fire protection in conjunction with the Wisconsin State Innovation Grant.
Yeah, a motion made, do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion made and seconded to discuss and consider village attorney's recommendations regarding the agreement between Village of Black Creek and Town of Black Creek for sharing services related to fire protection in conjunction with Wisconsin State Innovation Grant. So discussion, pretty much what we just had, intent. Okay, any other discussion? Alright. Item number 4, discuss and consider Black Creek Rural Fire Department's request for prepayment of the budgeted money. Looking for a motion for that discussion.
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider ongoing 2025 ambulance agreement / amendments. That's where we are?
No, we're on number 4.
Oh. Okay, discuss. Oh, really discuss and consider the Black Creek Rural Fire Department's request for prepayment of village budgeted money.
A motion made, and a second.
Second.
And a motion made and seconded to discuss and consider Black Creek Rural Fire Department's request for prepayment of village budgeted money. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so rural fire, there was discussion, regarding the village's questions, what happens with if we have the prepayment in July? What happens if there's money left at end of the year? And the rural fire committee did make a recommendation that any monies left in the budget at the end of the year will go into capital outlay equipment fund. So that's where we're at with that. Just reporting back to this board regarding that recommendation that the committee made. And I believe if there's any more discussion regarding that.
What other implications are there? It's always been done a certain way, and just because something's always been done a way doesn't mean it should continue that way. However, what other implications are there of making that change? And instead of paying on a monthly as needed basis, paying chunks of it at a time, what, are there any other implications to that?
Well, the biggest, I mean, I don't know if you're looking at implications for the village, I can't really say. I know there was concerns about loss of revenue on interest. That argument didn't fly too well with the fire department. You know, the fire department is very concerned about monies left over from last year that could have helped purchase SCBA equipment, where we ended up using budgeted money. So the fire department basically just wants to avoid problems at the end of the year, making sure they have the money available, because a lot of bills come at the end of the year. And if there's any money left, then they'll put it towards equipment. And, you know, as far as any implications for the village itself, I guess that's up to each individual trustee if there's a concern. I will admit to be getting beat up quite a bit at the meetings, and, yeah, I don't know what else to say.
So what are we defining as the agreement? Is it, so yeah, where are we at right now? So-
Well, originally, we were, I think a recommendation that we originally discussed was the, January 15th, there would be half a year's payment, and then July 15th would be the second half of the budget.
So bringing in the two payments.
Yeah, so right now, because we're so far into the year, we'll continue with the monthly until July 15th, and then we'll pay the balance of the budgeted fire department money. So that's, I believe, the recommendation the board has to make if we wanted to do that. And that's, that was agreeable. Like I said, the rural fire committee did make that recommendation.
Andy, wasn't there an issue with paying bills on time as well?
Well, yeah, and, you know, there was that aspect too, where, you know, sometimes when the bills are received or and approved, sometimes there's, overdue interest payments and so forth. That was another big thing for the rural fire and the fire department, try to avoid those extra costs because money wasn't coming in time. Is there any more discussion? There's no more discussion, I'll be looking for a recommendation.
I make a recommendation that we make payments to rural fire on January 15th and July 15th of each year, starting this year, 2026, with the first payment on July 15th.
Yeah, I have a motion made, do I have a second? I'll make the second. We have a motion made and seconded to pay payment for fire department budget for rural fire, January 15th and July 15th of the calendar year.
I think his motion was starting in 2026 with the
Starting
first
in
payment on
26.
July 15th.
Okay.
So, we got a motion, where are we at right now?
Got a
You have a
motion
motion
and
and
a
a second, no vote.
Okay.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Only, that motion I worry about the clarity of the motion. Because, does that mean we're not making a payment again until July?
Oh,
We can use we can use common sense. What I've learned being here for 5 years is we don't get to use common sense, you have to use all the little fancy
So,
stuff.
I have to,
restate
I don't
your
know any of
motion.
this, do I have to amend mine, or do I just state it over, how does that,
Well, well, if we're gonna go that far, you might have something completely different in 2027 due to this intent that we have, which won't be rural fire, right? You're gonna have to rename it something.
27.
Right, but
28.
But if you're gonna make something that we're gonna believe we're gonna pay yearly, right?
Yeah.
Going into the future,
Yeah.
and you're gonna call it something, we have to be very careful, like Corey said.
Yes.
Cause if you say, starting in 2026,
Yeah,
we
that-
pay this, right, but in 2027, it might not be called rural fire, so now you're gonna have to go back.
Yes,
And fix
I
it.
agree, but it won't be
Just-
27 and 28 at the earliest, but yes, you'll have to go back. That'll be a whole different district, it'll be a whole different, everything's gonna be different if that comes to fruition.
So it's.
Otherwise, it would stay that way if this stays in place.
It's again being very clear on, for, in my opinion,
Yeah.
I'm not the one making the motion, 2026. Being very clear in 2026.
Yeah, I agree, I heard what you said, and I agree 1,000%, so if I can just state it again, or if I have to, I don't know what I need to do.
There was a second.
To change my
No,
motion.
I don't, oh, now I'm getting, the details of Robert's rules at this point, I'm good.
We need to rescind, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
Well, the motion didn't pass,
Correct.
because there was no vote, so we can change,
Rescind the motion.
yes.
I make a motion to rescind my motion?
Correct.
I make a motion to rescind my motion on payments to the rural fire.
Make payments to rural fire 115 and 715 starting 2026
Yeah,
for the
because
first
the-
payment on
The whole thing,
July
and thank you for saying it.
Just making sure.
Yeah, 100%, I agree. Just wanted to get it right myself.
No, you're fine.
If we were to leave it as it was,
Oh,
there's a
no, I
lot of
heard
question.
you, I heard you clearly.
Again, you can look at it in
I
comments.
saw you think of it right before, and the second was already there. It's right, and I know what I should have said now.
Alright,
So-
so the motion is
second for my-
rescinded, and do I have to rescind the second? No.
So are we making the payments for April, May?
Well, here's what I would change my motion to.
We have.
Oh, sorry.
You're going there.
No, what is it, right? It's the right time for me to speak is what I'm asking. I would amend, my new motion would be again, to make payments January 1st and July 15th.
January 1st or
Oh,
January 15th?
15th, these are 15th and 15th.
Then July 15th.
And in 2026, continual monthly payments until July. And then make the other half of the payment in July of 26. That's to keep it going just like it is, and then change the whole thing to being paid twice a year.
There's a motion made.
No,
That's not
I'm
what you
not saying
said.
no, I'm saying that's, I couldn't follow that.
So
That
you
was very
said, you said
confusing.
pay January 15th,
Skip
And
January 15th.
just pay monthly until
Okay,
July
then I-
15th.
yeah, okay, pay monthly till, I make a motion to pay rural fire monthly till July 15th. Make the second half of the payment in July 15th. And then continue the January 15th and July 15th payments therefore.
So there is,
Let's just stick to this year.
Okay, that's what you're asking for.
Right.
yes, if we stick to 2026
Yeah.
for now, because we don't know what will
So
happen.
take the last half of that off there, and I think I got that motion there, so
So I'm just gonna let you start all over.
I make a motion to recommend
No,
pay rural fire.
not to recommend, you
Oh, I
wanna
make a
recommend
motion
it.
to pay rural fire monthly payments through June of 26, and make the second half of their payment
The remaining balance.
monies, budget, whatever,
The remaining balance.
the remaining
Because
balance,
It'll be who knows what it will be.
and pay the remaining balance on July 15th of 2026.
Okay.
made, they get it, brother.
We have a second.
June with remaining balance July 15th of 2026.
Alright. So, I'll second said motion. I don't have to read much.
To pay rural fire monthly through June 2026 with the remaining balance on July 15th, 2026.
So we have motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No.
Do you want a roll call or just opposition?
Yeah, it's the position, which is, that's all I heard. Alright. Alright, unfinished business, discuss and consider ongoing 2025 agreement amendments. I guess, I have a motion for the discussion, I'll tell you what I know. Does that make sense?
I'll make a motion to consider ongoing 2025 ambulance agreement amendments / amendments.
Okay, a motion made, do I have a second? Okay, we have a motion made and second, discuss and consider ongoing 2025 ambulance agreement and amendments. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so last week, town attorney and our attorney met. They're coming up with a draft agreement with the amendments that the village board requested, although the wording is in the rural fire committee minutes, if you're curious on that. So right now it's in the hands of the attorneys to draft an agreement. I would hope to have it next week for our reorg meeting, if that is available. We'll have it as a special meeting agenda item, is my plan. Any questions? Okay. Item number 2, discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to amend 89-13 to include B, penalties for dissemination of closed session information. Need a motion to discuss?
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to amend state statute 89-13 to include the penalties for dissemination of closed session information.
We have a motion made, do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded to discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to amend 89-13 to include B, penalties for dissemination of closed session information. We did hear back from Bob, and he has approved the ordinance with a little change in wording, which has been applied to the document.
Not in 89-13.
Oh, the other one, sorry. Okay.
89-13 is the penalties for disseminating closed session.
Is there any discussion?
You didn't have anything to change on that one?
No comment
No.
on that one.
Yeah. Alright, well, I was like, where was that?
Yeah, the other one, I was confused. Shocker. Any discussion? If there's no discussion, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the recommendation.
I'll make a motion to approve committee's recommendation to amend subsection 89-13 to include B, penalties for dissemination of closed session information.
We have a motion made, do I have a second?
Seconded.
We have a motion made and seconded to consider approval for committee's recommendation to amend 89-13 to include B, penalties for dissemination of closed session information. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 3, discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to approve and adopt ordinance 2026-1, an ordinance to repeal chapter 23 and in the process to abolish the Village of Black Creek Joint and Municipal Court. Looking for a motion for that discussion?
I'll make a motion to discuss and consider I'll make a motion to discuss and consider for approval committee's recommendation to approve and adopt ordinance 2026-1, an ordinance to repeal chapter 23 and in the process to abolish the Village of Black Creek Joint Municipal Court.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any discussion?
So with those changes that you guys were putting into this one, huh? That's okay. And those are the only changes you had.
Yep, we just added ethics commission along with director of state courts.
Any more discussion? If there's no more discussion, we'll be looking for a motion to approve committee's recommendation.
I'll make a motion to approve the committee's recommendation to approve and adopt ordinance 2026-1, an ordinance to repeal chapter 23 and in the process to abolish the Village of Black Creek Joint Municipal Court.
I have a motion made, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Then motion made and seconded to approve committee's recommendation to approve and adopt ordinance 2026-1, an ordinance to repeal chapter 23 and in the process to abolish the Village of Black Creek Joint Municipal Court. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? As there's no more agenda items, this meeting is adjourned.
I will let all you guys know that payroll check was not submitted from rural fire, so rescue members will not be able to meet payroll tomorrow.
I have it right here for you.
Dan hasn't signed it.
I know, but I'm just, I have it right here. So I
Yeah,
was
it
gonna
has to
get
get to the bank and it's not gonna get to the bank. You said you were gonna have it to me by today. I told you I needed it by today. It's unexcusable, Rebecca. You have a duty to do. I'm filing a complaint with the DWD against you.
Okay.
Andy, do you think it might be nice to introduce Noah and Natalie as new members?
Okay. Well, next week they'll get a big introduction, but we have Noah, and I don't know how to pronounce your name.
It's Natalie.
Natalie, just
Yeah,
Natalie?
Natalie.
Oh, okay. All right, they, accepted the write-in position for trustee, so, so next week is their big first meeting. So,
Along with all that hoopla, if they're being paid overtime on-call pay, we have 4 village employees that rotate on-call as well that are not paid overtime on-call. So if that is indeed a thing that we have to do, then the village has to look into that as well. For our public works, 3 public works centers, my guy, they have an on-call rotation. So for the 40 hours they're not at work, they're on call for 7 days straight. That was 136 hours of overtime. A week. Yep.
Where are the questions? So not the one
already have been mentioned, turn them on. I always. Oh, by the way, thank Corey for his service.
Yes.
Corey.
Thank you, Corey, for your service.
Fine, I got enough things to say.
What's he gonna do with all his free time now, Corey?
I got 4 kids. I don't have free
Oh,
time.
oh, then you'll be busy.
That's part of, decisions.
Yep, that's right.
All right.
Party's over, the lights are going out.
Yep, you can't stay here, no